Good morning. Oh, I was a little bit off there. Sorry. Good morning. I hope you're doing great. What is today? What today is? Today's Thursday. Big Thursday morning, December 15th. Kind of the half of the way of the month. Not really, because there's 31 days. So it had to be halfway through today before it's half of the month. But that's close enough, right? Close enough for rock and roll. Anyway, I hope you're having a good day. I hope you're having a good month. Wow, we're winding down. Where was I yesterday? And an elderly gentleman that it's almost next year. And I said, was that yesterday? I don't know, whenever. I was somewhere recently. I don't know where that would have been. And he said, we're almost to next year. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this year has just flown by. I mean, we're almost to 2023. That's crazy. Got new things coming, new things, good things coming in 2023. I've already started working on my plan, been praying about what to do. And so we're going to be doing some stuff on Thursday nights as far as Bible study, maybe devotionals, all kinds of crazy stuff. I'm even leaning towards some of my health coaching type stuff too. So stay tuned, stay close, because you never know what's going to go on around here, right? How I may branch out and change and add. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Anyway, so this morning, I was thinking, I read several things this morning. I read my Proverbs 15 because I'm doing that this month, right? Remember, there's one a day, and there's 31 days in December, so you can just start to start today. Read Proverbs 15 tomorrow, Proverbs 16, and finish out the month with it. Finish out strong, right? And so I read that, and it made me think of some different things, and I ran over to Hebrews and read some scriptures over there, and that made me think of something else, and I ran over somewhere else. I ended up in Acts 16 because I know we think we talked about it either yesterday or the day before. I can't remember when it was, but it seems like we talked about it over the last couple of days or so. Anyway, and so I was reading the story again of how Paul and Silas were in the jail, and they were arrested for something they didn't even do. Or they didn't do anything wrong. They did what they were arrested for, but it was all based on greed and jealousy and paganism and idolatry. If you want to read the back of the first part of the story, and the magistrates tore off their clothes and commanded them to be beaten with rods. And when they had laid many stripes on them, they threw them into prison. They told the jailer to keep them securely, that he had to put them in the inner prison and fasten their feet to the stocks. You guys, they were treated like mass murderers or something. They were treated like, and all they did was cast a demon out of a lady. And the people, she was working for people making idols, and they were using her and misusing her and manipulating her to make money. And all of a sudden they saw that they couldn't make money off of her anymore because she's free from the things that were tormenting her. And so that it made them, they got angry, and they literally beat these guys and put them in the inner prison with stocks, chains on their feet and their hands, so they couldn't leave. They thought, right? And so it says about midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God. And I'm like, I don't think that's what I would have been doing. I'd have been saying, I can't believe you let this happen, God. Right? I mean, I probably would have got around to praising God, but I might have taken the long way around, right? I might have taken it around to where, I was not doing quite as good as them, right? But they were singing and praising God in the middle of the night, in the middle of their difficulties, in the middle of their stress and strain, right? And it says the prisoners were listening. Let me just throw this out there. When you're in the crucible of life, there's always somebody listening. There's always somebody watching, and they want to know, is your God strong enough? Remember what the king said to Daniel in the lion's den? The next morning he threw Daniel in. He was grieved. He didn't want to have to do it. He threw him in the lion's den. And then the next morning he said, oh, Daniel, was your God able to deliver you? There's always somebody watching to see, is your God going to deliver you? Are you going to give in this time? Is this life experience going to crush you? And the prisoners, though, heard them singing and praising God in the middle of the crucible of life. I mean, I don't know. They had to have been weak. They had to have been in pain. And yet they were praising God and worshiping. And it says praying and singing hymns in the middle of the night in the prison, in a dark prison. They didn't have electricity, so there was no lights on. I can promise you that, right? It was dark and dank. That's an old word, right? And so what happened was, after that, there was an earthquake, and their chains fell off. Well, the jailer assumes everybody, and all the doors came open. Their freedom was right there, but they didn't grab that natural freedom because they had spiritual freedom. They had freedom in their heart. They had that peace of God reigning in their heart, right? And so they didn't jump and run out the door. And the jailer thought, just assumed everybody ran out the door because the doors were open and they were all prisoners. They weren't necessarily of good reputation, right? And so he was going to commit suicide because they were in his charge. And if he let them out, that was the judgment that he was going to be punished, right? And Paul and Silas says, "Hey, don't leave, don't hurt yourself. We're all here. We're all right here." Well, the jailer got saved. His whole family got saved. So they spent the night. It says the jailer took them and bandaged their wound, cleaned their wounds, and then Paul and Silas, the jailer's family got saved, and so they baptized them all. They fed them all. Then they took them back to the jail and waited for the rest of for the morning and for the next day's activities, right? And there's more to the story if you want to read. It's a really cool story. And so I started thinking, when we are crushed in that crucible, when things are going on and things are difficult for us, are we still singing and praising? Because you see, God doesn't change in the middle of our circumstances, right? He's still faithful. He's still full of grace. He's still full of mercy. He's already given us his peace. He can't give us any more than all. We already have all of that. We have everything we need. And so even when things get tight and even when things start pressing in on us, we can still praise God because we can look at creation. We can look at what he's already done in our hearts, right? There's a lot of things to be thankful for. We can find those things. And so as I was thinking about this and how they began to just sing and praise God in the middle of at midnight, dark, right? And they were already in a dark building already, and so it's even darker on the inside of the prison. And there might have been a moonlight, there might have been a little bitty window up at the top or something, but it was dark. And in that darkness, in that crucible, they sang and praised God no matter what. And I thought, Paul understood pain. They had been beaten. This wasn't even just the only time he had ever been beaten. But listen to what he says over here in 2 Corinthians 4. He says in verse 6, he says, "For it is God who commanded light to shine out of darkness, even in the dark prison, even the dark prison of the soul, the dark night of the soul, who has shone in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Christ." He's saying, no matter how dark it is out there, God has shown his light in our hearts so that we can see Christ, so that we can understand grace, so that we can receive his peace, so that we can walk in his love. No matter how it looks, no matter how it feels, right? Physically or spiritually, mentally, however. But then listen, he says, this is a treasure we have, verse 7. But we have this treasure, the treasure of knowing God, of having his grace, his peace, his mercy, all these things operating in and around us and through us, right? We have this treasure of knowing Christ in an earthen vessel. We're just flesh. We're just dirt, made out of dirt, right? How God did it, I don't know. He breathed life into it, and we're still working on that one breath he breathed into Adam, right? But he said we have this treasure in this earthen vessel. And why? He tells us the why. So that the power may be of God and not of us. We don't have the power, but God's grace has the power to carry us through whatever we're facing today, right? And then listen to what he says, because sometimes faithers make us feel like we're not supposed to talk about our bad circumstances. We're not supposed to, but sometimes we got to acknowledge them to get out of them, right? Okay. Anyway, and he says, we are pressed on every side. Paul's feeling it, man. He's feeling it. We're crushed on every side, or we're pressed on every side. We're in the crucible of life, but we're not crushed, right? We are perplexed. Can we say that? That's an old word too. We're perplexed, but we're not in despair. We got some situations. We got some stuff we don't know what to do with, but we are not in despair. We are persecuted, but we're not forsaken. We can be persecuted in this life. We in America don't really know quite the extent of persecution as other parts of the world yet, although we're learning some of it, but we're not forsaken. Even when the world turns against us and crushes in on us, God doesn't forsake us. We are still with God. We may be struck down. We may be tripped up, but we are not destroyed. Why? Because we're always carrying Christ in our heart so that it can be manifest through our circumstances, through our body, through our situation. And we see that example here in Acts 6. See, Paul lived what he preached, right? They were crushed here. They were beaten physically, and yet they began to pray and sing hymns to God and praise God. And God said, "That sounds great. I'm going to join in." And boom, there was an earthquake, because when God sings with us, things start to shake. And the only thing that was removed was what was holding them bound, right? And then they see the salvation of the jailer and his whole family, and then they eventually got out of jail. They went back. They stayed there and made the magistrates and the officers do it right. They said, "No, you put us in here like this, you're going to take us out the right way. We ain't going to ignore you." What strength they had. And yet, in the middle of the night, in the middle of a dark night, they began to praise God and sing hymns. Why? Because God doesn't change in the middle of our night. God's light isn't dimmed by the darkness of our soul, or the darkness of our circumstances, or the darkness of our situations. God is still light, and he's still shown that light in our hearts so that we can see Christ even in our dark nights, even in our difficult circumstances, even in a pandemic, even after a pandemic, even in our fears, even in our worries, even in our doubts. And we've got them, we just don't talk about them sometimes, right? That's okay. But right in the middle of whatever we're feeling today, God's in the mix. He's right there in the prison with them, right? And he set them free that night. And there's the more important than their bodies being free, their souls were free. And your soul, your mind, your will, your emotions can be free today, and can walk in peace no matter what your circumstances are. Why? Because it's God's peace, not yours. We can still have life. Why? Because it's God's life, not ours. We can still have the mercy of God and the grace of God undergirding us and carrying us. Why? Because it's his grace and his mercy. Well, there's not a plug to unplug it. We can't turn it. There's not a switch to turn it off. We've got it. We just have to find that place in our hearts to continue to pray and praise God and sing to God, because we're singing about him, not our circumstances. We're singing about his grace, not what we're going through. We're singing about his power to carry us through the things we're going through, right? Because and when that happens, it changes everything from the inside out, not always from the outside in. Sometimes our outside circumstances don't change, but our insides do. Our souls can be free right in the middle of our problem, right in the middle of our perplexities, right in the middle of our situations, anything we're facing, the crucible of life. When it crushes us, let it bring forth that praise and worship of God. Why? Because God didn't change. He's still faithful. And because of that, we can peace out. We can be cool today. We can trust him for today. That's what I plan to do. So peace out. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.